Hi everybody, it's Susan from Sunrise Quilt Studio and welcome to week 50 of the Stash Buster block series. And our block today is called Starflower, and it is made with half square triangles and single squares, and it makes a really pretty start block. So I hope you'll stay with me and I'll show you how to put this one together. Here are the fabrics you're going to need to make the Starflower block. For color number 1, which is your medium color, you're going to need 4 pieces that are 3 7/8 of an inch square. For color number 2, which is dark, you're going to need 4 that are 3 7/8. For your background, you'll need 4 that are 3 7/8, and then you'll need 4 that are 3 1/2. So we're going to start by taking these 4 3 7/8 inch background squares, and we're going to draw a line on the wrong side on the diagonal. So we're just going to take them one at a time, and you can use a pencil or a pen, a friction pen, a water soluble marker, air soluble marker, anything that you want, because this will not show up. Whatever you use is not going to show up on your quilt, because we're going to use this as a guide for sewing as well as a guide for cutting. So we're going to be cutting on that line, and it isn't going to show. So we're going to do that to all 4. And then you're also going to take 2 of your color number 1 3 7/8 inch squares, and you're going to draw a diagonal line on the back of those. And we're going to make a bunch of half square triangles now. So these are the 2 at a time half square triangle units that we're making, and we're going to match up the white backgrounds with 2 of the dark squares and 2 of the medium squares. So these are going to go together. Then you're going to match up these 2 medium squares that you've put the diagonal line on with these 2 dark. So we're going to set those together, and we're going to make half square triangles. And I'm going to start with the background fabric and the medium and dark fabric squares. Now I have a 50 weight thread in my bobbin and in my needle, and we're just going to match these pieces up. I'm going to start with the medium squares just because that's what's on top of my stack. So we're going to sew a 1/4 inch away on both sides of this line that we drew. So it's pretty simple. Just follow that line and put it to your 1/4 inch piecing foot on, or some other way that you mark for your 1/4 inch. And just swing that around and sew on the other side. Okay. And then I'm going to repeat that. So now we have all these done, so we're going to cut them apart, and we're just going to cut right on the line that was drawn here from one corner to the next. So I'm going to cut all of these apart, and each set of squares will give 2 half square triangles. Okay, now we're going to get ready to do some pressing, and to make this block go together easier, there's one thing we're going to do that's kind of backwards. These pairs of half square triangles that have the medium fabric and the background fabric, we're going to press those towards the light fabric. So I'm going to pull all of those out. There should be 4 of them, and we're going to press those all towards the light fabric. This will help us match up seams in another step, so I'll show you that when we get to that. But we're going to have to match up some of the diagonal seams, and it's going to be easier if we've got these pressed to the light and the other ones pressed to the dark. Okay, I'm going to set them aside. Now all the rest of them we're going to press towards the dark, so I'm going to place those all face up, with the dark side facing up, I should say, and we'll press those open. The next step is to trim off all the dog ears. We've got a lot of points coming together in this block, especially right here. We've got 8 seams coming together. That creates a lot of bulk here. So as much bulk as we can get rid of, it's going to be helpful in the end. So I'm just going to trim off the dog ears on all of the pieces. All right, now we're going to lay out the block. So we've got 3 different sets of half square triangles here, and we're going to put this block together in quadrants because each quadrant is exactly the same, so it's just hopefully will make it a little bit easier. But in the corner we're going to put all 4 of the 3.5 inch squares that are a background fabric. For me that's white. Then we're going to go to the dark and the white together, and we're going to position those like this. Down below this one we're doing the white and the medium, and the medium fabric is going to face the dark here, and then the dark and the medium we're going to face each color. We're going to match each color up, dark to dark, medium to medium. So this is the quadrant, and we're going to make 4 of these. That's why I stacked them all the same way. So we're going to sew these pieces to these pieces, these pieces to these pieces. It'll give us 2 rows. Then we'll sew those rows together. Then we will have 4 quadrants, and we will sew those 4 quadrants together. So let's start with sewing these 2 together to make the top rows of the quadrant. Now at this point we don't have any points to match, so we can just pretty much whip through these pretty quickly. So just match up your raw edges and sew with 1/4 inch seam allowance. Okay, for these pieces with the plain white square and the dark with the white half square triangle, we're going to press these towards the dark. So we're going to press these this way. So I'm going to lay these with the dark side up, and we're going to press towards the dark. Okay, set them to the side, and now for this unit, since this unit fits this way, this one fits this way, we've got this pressed towards the dark, we're going to press this one towards the medium. So we're going to lay these so the medium is up and then press open. So we're going to do that with all four. Now let's put everything back in order. So I've got everything lying the same direction, and this is how the quadrant is going to go together, like that. So you can see how it makes the diamonds here. So that's what we're wanting. We need to match this point with this seam. So we're going to lay these two together and then just flip them over so that we can see the point. And where the stitching lines cross, that forms the point we want to stitch about a thread or two width to this side of it. So within the seam allowance, we want to stitch just a thread or two to the side. So we're going to nest those two seams together so that they are fitting snug, and then we're going to take this to the sewing machine. We're going to sew it. Now if you want to, you can put a pin in there and to hold it in place, and then we're going to sew. Okay, so 1/4 of an inch seam allowance as always. And as I'm getting close, I'll remove my pin, and I'm watching where those two stitching lines cross, and I'm going to sew just to the outside of those. Line up the rest of my fabric and then stitch through. And my aim is to not blunt off that point. That's why I am stitching a little bit outside of it. So here we go. So now let's do the others. Okay, now we're ready to do some pressing once again, and we are going to press towards the darker fabric. So we're going to press not on the side with the single square, but the other side. And we're going to press each unit the same way. And this way, it's a little bit tougher this way because we've got more seams working against us, but it will go together easier, I think. Now we're ready to put the block together. So all of the single squares are going to go to the outside. And what we're basically doing is just taking this square and we just keep rotating it is what we're doing. So there we go. Here's the star flower block, and now we need to sew these two units together, these two units together, and then sew the row. So we need to match these 2 points. So now we've got points to match. Instead of a point to a seam, we've got a point to a point. So we're going to turn this over, and if you look on this side, the way this is pressed, you can't see where those stitches cross. So turn it over on this side, and here you can see it there. So we're going to go through the point here and here, and then go through the point there on this one. Line those up together and just pin them in place. Now you also need to match this seam with this seam, so we're going to just nest those two together, and if you want to, go ahead and pin those. And now we're ready to stitch these two together, and we're going to do the same on this one. Okay, now we're ready to go back to the sewing machine. Okay, I'm going to remove that first pin and get my threads. Hold them there. Here we go. And I'm going to do the same thing when I get to this point here where the stitches are crossing. I'm going to watch that and try and hit just outside of those. And then my next two. Cut them apart and press, and then match up more points and sew one last seam. Okay, now on this part, since we have so many lines of stitching coming together in the center, I am going to press these seams open, and I think that helps eliminate a lot of bulk and helps the block lie flatter when you're done. So we're going to go ahead and do that. This is a little more work than just sewing, or this is a little bit more work than just pressing the seam to one side, but I think it helps. So I'm going to set that one aside and get this one. And I just can't do that one-handed. There we go. I almost got myself with the tip of the iron there. Okay. All right, now we need to match points. We need to match the center, we need to match these points and these points. Now when you turn this over, you can see where the lines cross here. You can see the point right there because this seam is pressed open, but you can't see this one here, but you can see it from that side. So I do have a little trick, and requires a pencil and a ruler and a pin. The first thing we're going to do is pin these all together. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to go right in that point here and through the point here and line them up and pin them. And then for here, the point where all of those come together can be a little bit tricky. You need to go see where all of these colors are different. If you go right above that, you're right at the tip. So, and then go through the tip of this one here and pin it. On this side, what I like to do is I'm going to open this up here for a second. This is just a regular, 6-inch ruler. And it will work, but if you want to be extremely accurate, use a ruler that has the line here that you can see. Let me pull this out a little bit. Okay, and you just want to go in right where that point is and see if you can get everything lined up. This isn't exactly 1/4 inch because I'm leaving, I'm wanting not to cut off that point. So draw a line right there and then just extend that, connect those there so you can see them when you're sewing, and that should line up to your point. So go ahead and use your pen and put it in right where your pencil line crosses the stitching line. Put it in there, and that comes out right at the point, and then put that in here at the point here on this section. So then I'm nesting those seams together, and then I'm going to repin that. Okay, and now we're ready to sew the two sections together. Okay, I need to get all my seams tucked in there. I'm able to see my pencil line, so I know to either be on that line or just right to the right side of it. And come into the center. And I need to watch that point there. I want to stitch right to the right side of that. And then for this point, the same thing. I'm going to stitch to the right side of that. And if you don't hit it exactly right on the first try, you can always try it again. Okay, let's see. This looks pretty good. So let's go to the ironing surface and press this open. Okay, so we're going to press this seam open too. And just take your time with this. If you want to use steam, use steam. I don't happen to have water in my iron right now, so I don't have any steam. And if you have a clapper, I don't know if you know what that is. It's a wooden block that tailors use and seamstresses use when they're sewing garments. And when they're pressing a seam and they want it to stay really flat after they press it, they lay that block on top of it, and that helps make that seam really flat. I don't happen to have one of those, but I can see where it would come in handy with quilting at times too. Okay, that looks pretty good. So let's turn this over and look at the block. Of course, it picked up every little thread that was on the pressing mat, so let me remove them. Okay, center looks pretty good. It's not perfect, but it does look pretty good. The points all look fairly good. This one's a little bit off, so I could redo that one if I wanted. When you're pressing your seams open, what I have found is that they do like to kind of shift, and that's what happened here. I think this would have been perfect, but as I was sewing, the bottom layer shifted faster than the top layer, and so they're not exactly across from each other. Of course, I can pick those stitches out and redo that and get that perfect if I want. So, but anyway, here we have the star flower block. Here are 4 of the blocks setting side by side. This is what you would get if you didn't put any sashing or alternate blocks in with this quilt block. And you can see it makes a square in the center, and then between each block it also makes a diamond shape. So it can make a pretty interesting design if you have a quilt full of these star blocks. Now, since it's asymmetrical block, it doesn't matter which way you turn the blocks, you're going to get the same look. Of course, if you put this star block on point, you'll have a whole complete different look, so that's always a possibility. And I think blocks that are laid on point make some really interesting quilts. So I hope you give this block a try. I hope you enjoyed this video on the star flower block, and I do hope you'll give this one a try. This is a simplified method of making a Lemoyne star, and it goes together pretty quickly and pretty easily, so I hope this is one you'll give a try. So if you like this video, click the like button. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already, and click the notification bell so you'll be notified when the next video goes up. And in the meantime, I hope you're all staying safe and healthy, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching. For more quilting ideas, click on the video links. And to keep up with my latest projects, click on the subscribe button. I hope to see you again soon.